that human beings will divide over all kinds of issues. It can be race, religion, ethnic background, language, power groups, but the most important thing he thought was the division of property, wealth. And that's always been the case, certainly in most Western countries, that wealth tends to divide people into different classes. So the problem then is, what are you going to do? How do you deal with the problem of faction? Well, as he explains, there are only two ways to deal with it. Either you eliminate the causes, or you control the effects. He rejects eliminating the causes. Why? Either the possible solutions will destroy liberty. What are the possible ways to eliminate the causes? Well, you could have a homogeneous country, and there are homogeneous countries around the world. And what happens in them? Look at Eastern Europe. What happens to the ethnic Hungarians in the other countries outside of Hungary, where they're a minority? They're always discriminated against, and you have a large majority, whatever that ethnic majority is, and then you have these small minorities. And the solution in Europe, and I'm not saying that it's not proper for Europe, because Europe is a different problem than the United States. Theirs is some kind of protection by way of minority rights. That is not the way we started out. Instead, medicine says you can either do that, or you can control everybody, which of course is oppression. We've seen that in Nazi Germany, we've seen it in Soviet Union, we've seen it in Latin America and elsewhere. Those are all the possible ways to get at the cause. You can suppress the factions, in other words. He rejects that. Instead, what we're going to do is control the effects of faction. Now, you may or may not realize it, but there are many people in our government today who believe that what you should do is to eliminate the causes. Eliminate the causes. They don't understand that controlling the effects is eliminating the cause. For many, on the right and on the left, it's almost a religious crusade to get rid of their enemies who have the wrong ideas. That's a prescription for what we're seeing in Washington today. It's an ideological battle of the type that Madison attempts to avoid. Okay. So the solution is controlling the effects. How do you do that? Well, it really amounts to, although Madison never uses the term, it's divide and conquer. It's divide and conquer. Because the problem is not the minority factions. The majority factions can control them. The problem is the majority faction. So if you're in a country like Mexico was for 70 years, when there was no opposition party and the PRI kept getting elected through corrupt elections, what you had was a majority and a minority faction. Boom. There is no real solution to that problem. Instead, the design of our Constitution from the beginning is to multiply factions. Now think about it. Why would you take the disease and spread it? If faction is the problem, why would you spread it? Well, it's kind of like vaccinating somebody. You get a little bit of the germ. You might think of it that way. But the more groups that there are, the groups actually control themselves. The groups compete among themselves. What a lot of people in this country and certainly in Europe do not understand